My name is Anthony from GradeXpert, and we're going to spend a bit of time going through the GradeXpert incident tracker. Now, the incident tracker, as you can imagine, is used to record incidents that occur at your school. And this can be any type of incident. It can be a negative behavior, it can be a positive behavior incident, it could be a sick bay visit. Almost any type of incident that you want to be able to record at the school can be done through the incident tracker. So the process is to first set up an incident, which contains drop-down lists of things like where it happened, what time of the day it happened, and so on. And then you actually enter an incident when one occurs. And at the end of the week or the end of the month or end of the term, you can then analyze your incidents graphically to see, for example, what's the most common time of day for people to visit the sick bay, or what's the most common reason for negative behavior incidents. Incidents in GradeXpert are quite similar in setup to assessments. You give an incident type a name, such as positive behavior or negative behavior, and then you can set up drop-down lists that you can choose from when you're entering your incidents. So the setup of the incidents is done in the settings screen. And you'll see we have a tab next to the assessments tab called incidents. And we've got a few incident types set up here already. You can see we've got a behavioral incident, plus a positive behavior, plus a sick bay visit. And this looks very similar to the way assessments are set up. You can have up to 12 drop-down lists per type of incident. And in this example where we've got behavioral incident highlighted, you can see the first thing we're going to ask teachers to select is the location of the incident, then the description, then the level of behavior, then a time, and then did we contact the parents, and who did we share this information with, and what were the consequences. This is all completely customizable. And usually the best starting place is your paper-based recording system for incidents, because that is something that can be replicated in GradeXpert. But what I'll show you as well is, let's actually just call this existing one, I'll just rename it to old, and we'll recreate one called behavioral incident. Now, the result types, such as the location, the description, level of behavior, those are all set up in the same way as assessment result types. You just go to the result types tab, and you can see we've got all our normal assessment result types. Letter scores, progression points, test number, and so on. Further down the list, though, you'll start seeing things that are relating to incidents. So, for example, a location can be set down as a drop-down list: classroom, playground, oval, library, whatever you want to set up for them. And, you know, what's the reason for the behavioral incident? You can have almost anything you like in your drop-down list. Now, teachers will be able to select more than one. That is something that you can set up. And you can also then add to this list as you need, as you find throughout the year. If you want teachers to be able to select multiple items from one of the drop-down lists, you just tick this box that says allow multiple selections. And allow multiple selections is only relevant to incidents. It doesn't work for assessment results. So let's add a new incident, and I'm going to call this a negative behavior incident. So we go into the grouping, the incident group, and in this one it's called incidents, and we have another one called sick bay. But in the incidents group, I'm just going to click add, and that lets me create a new incident type. I press spacebar on that new row, I can then type in the full description, and I want to call this a negative incident. At this point, we then have to define what we want teachers to be able to select. Now, as with assessments, each incident can have any amount of free text entered along with these drop-down lists. With assessments, you can also add attachments, and you can also notify other staff members when they've been entered. So let's just look at the first result type that we want to put in for this negative incident. In the same way that you set up your assessments, you can now just choose what the detail is to put into the drop-down list. So we've got a few drop-down lists set up. There's one called misdemeanor. I think we'll use, well, that's the reason that we're using for the sick bay. Let's just say the description first. And you can see we're using the description result type that's got a whole bunch of negative types of behavior that we want to be able to record. So this is saying that the first thing we're going to ask teachers to choose for a negative incident is what was the description. We're then going to add the location because we want them to also put the location. We can just search for that result type just by typing in here. There's the location. Let's just leave those two for now because we'll try and keep it simple. But you can have additional drop-down lists of severity level or virtually any other type of item of data that you want to record. Once we hit save, we're then ready to go. That incident has been set up. Teachers can start entering that information and logging incidents. The other thing that we can do when we set up incidents is we can define what terms we want to use for the perpetrator, for the bystander, and for the victim of an incident. This is all optional. You don't have to use that, of course, but it does make it very easy to identify the roles of each student in the incident that you've logged. And you can then report on that. Just show, for example, show me all incidents where there is a victim and who is the victim, for example. These terms are set up in the Other Settings tab. And you can see down here on the Terminology tab within the Other Settings tab, you can call a perpetrator anything you want, a victim anything you want, and an observer anything you want. So in this case, instead of calling a perpetrator, we're calling them an instigator. And you can change this as often as you like. All right, so once your incident is set up, teachers across the school can now start using it. And it's very easy to log incidents. Basically, all you need to do is click a button up at the toolbar that says Add an Incident. And when you add an incident, you'll be presented initially with the list of available incident types. So you just select which one you want to use. Let's put in one of our new incidents that we've just set up called a negative incident. And you will now be asked to choose which students are involved in this incident. You can choose one or more, and you can optionally also choose what the student's role is. So let's say it was Russell. I'm going to tick his name and I'm going to choose his role in this incident. He was the instigator, and then Floyd was the victim. And it was seen by Brian, so he is a bystander, as well as Rick, who is also a bystander. So I've now selected 4 students. You can see across the top, Russell is the instigator, Floyd is the victim, and Brian and Rick are the observers, or they saw this happen. The date of the incident defaults to today, but of course you can backdate them just by changing the date shown. The time of the incident, again, defaults to the current time, but you can change that to anything you want. I'll change it to 2 p.m. The term is automatically set up for you based on the date of the incident, and the name of the staff member who is managing this incident is selected from this drop-down list. Now, if you recall, we set up 2 drop-down lists for this particular incident type, the description and the location. So you can then just choose what is the description of the negative behavior. Let's call it aggressive behavior. You can actually select more than one item here because you can see there's a little checkbox next to each item. So it's aggressive behavior and bullying. And you can see now we've got both set up there. And where did this happen? Well, you just got a single choice here. So let's say this happened in the car park, for example. So we've now put in a lot of the elements for this incident that will allow us to analyze it further down the track. You can then also type comments in the same way as you type in comments for an assessment result or reports. you can just say Russell was found to be hurting other students. Spoke with parents, suspended for 2 days. For example, you can type in as much information as you want to help support the information that you've selected above that. At this point, you can also add attachments to this incident. You might have a photograph of vandalism or damage to property. You can then just attach that item to this notice, and then it will always be available to view and open down the track. That's pretty much all you have to do to set up an incident. What you can do at this point is you can say, all right, who do I want to notify? Which teachers do I want to notify that this incident has been logged in GradeXpert? And these teachers that you select here will be receiving a notification by email. So they don't have to be logged into GradeXpert. They will get a notification in their inbox that says a negative incident has been entered for these students. This is the information, these are the details, and they are then immediately informed. So you just select those teachers and away you go. Now at this point, if you hit the Save and Close button, it will simply save this information into GradeXpert and alert these 3 users. But you can also click the Save and Print button to get a preview of what this incident will look like if it gets printed out or gets sent to parents. So what you can see now is the document that's printed, including a photograph of the current student. We can get rid of the other student names on here. The I next to Russell's name means he's the instigator, and you can see all the other information that's put on here. This can be printed out and given to parents to sign and bring back to the school, or if you're using the GradeXpert Parent Portal or emailing parents directly from GradeXpert, you can use the Send to Parents option from this preview to get this information sent to parents. Now, one of the things that you notice underneath the student's photograph, there's an incident ID. And I've made a note of this particular one, 70741, and this allows us to edit the incident very quickly. We can just type in that ID and it'll take us straight to that incident, and I'll show you that in a moment. So let's just close this one. It's now bringing up Floyd because he was marked as the victim, and it's bringing up Brian as the bystander and Rick. So that's pretty much all done. That incident has been logged, those teachers have been notified. We've optionally printed out the incident report. And if we want to come back and edit this incident, instead of clicking Add an Incident, we just come down by clicking the little drop-down arrow and choose Edit an Incident. And we can just type that incident ID into this text box that we saw on the printout, which was 70741. Click Edit Incident, and it allows us then to make changes to this incident that we've just viewed. For example, we may not want the other student names on the reports that we're printing out. So on the Save and Print drop-down, let's just make a change. Of course, that's not coming up, but there is an option to be able to say exclude other students. We'll double check to see why that's not coming up. But you can make changes accordingly, and then your updated information will be shown over here. So we've seen how to create a new incident type. We've seen how to add an incident to a student history by selecting multiple students that this may apply to as well. And we've also seen how to edit the incident that you've put in using the incident ID that is present on each printout or each email. When you want to look at a student history to see their incidents that have been logged against them, you just go through the normal process into students and results. And what you'll see first is when you're looking at your student list, you've got a number of columns, and the one we're looking at now is the one that says number of incidents, which we can sort as well. And this is telling us how many incidents have been saved against each of the students in our list. And in this case, Tamara has one that we haven't yet read. So she has 3 incidents, but one of those we haven't yet read. And we know that because the number of incidents is shown in red, and the number in brackets after the number of incidents tells us how many are unread. If you double click on Tamara's name, you'll be able to see those 3 incidents on the Incidents tab. So you can see, I just click on the Incidents tab, and there is a behavior incident just by hovering the mouse over that. So when I hover the mouse over the incident, you'll see the incident description come up. So those are 2 old behavioral incidents. And she also had a sick bay visit. On the 20th of February this year, she went to the sick bay for scratches. It was minor in terms of severity, and we sent her back to class. You can then also see who entered it, when it was last updated, and which teachers received notifications. We could go to different students. Let's look at Mitchell, but double-clicking on Mitchell's name, if we go to his incident tab, you can see a summary of incidents 2019, 2020, going back as far as we have information for that student on GradeXpert. So just by hovering the mouse over the description of the incident, we'll be able to see all the other data for that particular incident. So this is a positive behavior incident that we entered for Mitchell, and he was assisting younger students, and a comment was put in saying Mitchell was very helpful today with the younger students. You can edit any of these incidents if you have edit permission just by double clicking on them. So this is now that positive behavior incident. Let's edit the comments and say Mitchell was very helpful today with the younger students. Gold star today, for example. So we're just updating information in an incident. And when we save it, you'll see that that new information has been saved against the student history. So this is a really good way to see, for an individual student, every behavioral incident or sick bay visit or positive incident that you've entered against them over any period of time, because you can then just hit a button that says print all incidents. And that will give you a summary of every incident that we found for this particular student. And so this is how we look at incidents grouped by student. This isn't yet looking at the summary view of the incidents, which we'll look at in a moment. So as you're entering incidents throughout the day, throughout the term, from a leadership perspective or a year level leader perspective, you may want to analyze all your incident data so that you can better understand, for example, where issues are occurring, where incidents are occurring, which classes are having the most problems and so on. And this is all done through the incident summary screen. Now the incident summary screen is accessible via the summaries toolbar button across the top. And the third item down is incident summary. You can see that the first thing we're asked to do is choose what type of incident, which of the incident types we want to analyze. Let's use the behavioral incident that was set up previously, because at this time, you can also choose a date range for the incidents. You can make it just for this year, for this term. You can change the start date and end date if you want to. Let's just choose this whole year for now. I'm just going to hit the button that says refresh, and that will load up all the incidents that have been logged for the behavioral incident type for this year. I could change that and make that 2019 and go back even further. You'll see we get more and more incidents shown. So this is again a summary of the incidents grouped by the incident type, but for all different students. So there's Mitchell's, there's Finley, it's Mitchell again, there's Seth, there's more people showing up as we go through the list. So we've got their role as well, victim, instigator. We can sort by any of these columns, so we can see all the bystanders or all the instigators or all the victims. You can also see we've got incident date and time, which other students were involved, the location, the description, the level of behavior. These are other items that have been put in for that old incident type. And what we can do now is graph this. We simply click the button once we've got the incidents up that we want to graph. We simply click a button that says graph the incidents. And this then allows us to choose one of these graphs or a number of these graphs that we might want to view. So let's say we want to go by time of day, day of week, week of month, and month of year. I'll change it to 2 graphs per page, or per row at least. So this is telling us in the first graph the number of incidents by time of day. Well, most of them in this example are between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. In fact, we can even change the sort order just by saying sort instead of by the description, which in this case is the time, just sort it by the number of incidents. And that then makes it easier to see which time period has the highest number of incidents down to the lowest. Then we can look at the day of the week. Well, we can see Wednesdays are the highest day for these behavioral incidents. Then we can look at the week of the month. Well, week 3 followed by week 4 are the highest. And by the month of the year, well, February certainly seems to have the biggest number of incidents. And we can simply change these around by ticking or unticking them. Let's go by year level. We can see year 5 students are the most problematic in this example database. And we can go even further down by the class within that year level. You can see 5As are the most problematic. You can then have a look at incidents by staff member. You can see who's logged the most number of incidents. But from this point on, we're starting to graph the drop-down lists. So I'm going to choose location. This is telling us that the bike shed is the most problematic area. Let's change this view of the data to, say, a pie chart. Sometimes this is easier to analyze, and we can see that the bike shed has 9 students since start of 2019 who've had these incidents logged. We can see who those students are in any of these pie segments simply by clicking on a segment. So if I want to know who the 9 students are who were behind the bike shed, I just click that button and you can see all the names pop up. And that information supports the data that you're seeing over here. Let's look at description as well. So this is the reason for kids having this log. Let's change that to a pie chart as well. Again, we can see fighting is the highest percentage. Let's look at, in this case, the incident time. This is a different breakdown to the actual time. We've got it divided up into periods, for example, before school, homeroom period 1, 2, recess, lunch, and so on. So this is another way of looking at it. I want to see these 6 students who have been having this behavioral incident log during lunch, so I can just click on that bar. If I wanted to get more information about all these students, I can click the button that says print all incidents. And these are all the supporting incident data. So that's all 6 students who had this incident logged during lunch. We can even have parent contact. Well, how did we contact the parents? Let's set that to a pie chart. Well, most of them were by email and by phone. I want to find out which 11 students we phoned. You can just click on that segment, and there are the student names. So these graphs give you a lot of detail that you can use for any time period. I'm going to get rid of the date, so this might bring back more than 24 incidents. Now it's 57 incidents because we're going back to 2018. So you can see how far back you can go. You can also use this useful feature called incident count by student. And the incident count by student basically adds up the number of incidents per student and gives you a total. So straight away we can see Mitchell from 5A had the most number of incidents, along with Seth. As we go down, you'll see there's fewer and fewer. The other thing we can do here is we can include archived students. Now, this is really useful if you wanted to look at data from, say, the previous year, but a number of students have left the school. If you tick include archived students, that information will stay in GradeXpert for this report. You can then also do things like filter just so you can see instigators. So I'm excluding all roles except instigator. And these are the incidents where these students were the instigators. Again, we can edit a single incident directly from this summary screen. If we want to modify any of the data, well, we wanted to say, yes, we shared it with the head of campus. Or we can print out all these incidents just by clicking print all incidents, which will be a summary of all that information that we've just seen. Or we can print an individual incident. So I might want this incident from Walter Bernard to be reprinted. I can just click print this incident. All right, does anyone have any questions so far based on what you've seen? If you do, just type it into the chat window. All right, so now we know that we can enter incidents by clicking add an incident. We can edit them either by clicking edit an incident here and putting in the incident ID, or going to the student's history, or going to the incident summary screen. Let's just have a look at sick bay visits because that's quite interesting as well. So to look at all the sick bay visits, it's treated just the same as, say, a behavioral incident, but different items in the drop-down list. So if we graph the sick bay visit, let's see what's the most common reason. And let's sort that by number of incidents. Well, we can see 27% of the reason for students showing up at sick bay is for headaches. You can click on the headache bar and you'll see who those students are. All the way down to vomiting, scratches or cuts, fever, toothache. Well, who showed up for toothache? Well, it's Edgar and June on this date when they were in these classes. We can have severity as well, major or minor. Let's make that a pie chart, for example. We can see the majority of the incidents are minor, but only by a small amount. And if we want to see what these major incidents are, we can just, again, click on a bar segment, or a pie segment or a bar to see who the students are who make up that particular grouping. So I'm just going to take you through the process of entering a sick bay visit. What a lot of schools have done with GradeXpert's sick bay entry is they simply put a computer with GradeXpert in the sick bay. Whoever is attending to the student clicks add an incident. They choose sick bay visit. They would choose the student name. So Leslie, you don't obviously need a role for a sick bay visit. Date, time, teacher's name. Now, why did they show up at the sick bay? And this is a predefined list of reasons for showing up at the sick bay that can be tailored to your school. So headache, for example, it's minor. What did we do? We basically just sent them back to class. You could have another drop-down list saying what the treatment was. You could have another drop-down list saying how long they spent in sick bay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. And all this information is designed to give you very good data for analyzing at the end of the term or the week or the semester. So you can then tell, for example, what's the average or what's the most frequent length of time students are spending in sick bay. And you might find, well, there's only a small handful of students who are spending a half an hour in sick bay each time, and that can allow you to then investigate further and figure out what's going on there. So I've set up the sick bay item, and when you print this one, just hit the save and print button. So you get a similar look to the other incident, and you simply put their data into your student history. Again, this can be printed out just by clicking the print button. This gives you a hard copy that you can then send home with the student that they can get their parents or guardians to sign and bring back to school the next day. If you're using the GradeXpert Parent Portal, this information can be made available to parents online, and they'll be able to see all this information, and you'll be able to see when they read it as well. So that's just another thing. We won't go into the parent portal right now, but that is a function that is available. So I've entered that sick bay visit for that one student, Leslie Garrison, and I can then go to Leslie Garrison's history and check that incident. So I'm just loading up my student list. I'll just type L space G, takes me straight to Leslie Garrison. I can either double click on his name or click select student, which is the same thing. And there we can see the sick bay visit that we've just logged in GradeXpert. So this gives you an ongoing history of every single incident shown for students throughout their time at the school. I'm just going to pick a student that has a few more incidents. Let's look at Walter, for example. If you wanted to print out all the incidents, and I'll expand all these items, if you wanted to print out all the incidents for 2019, for example, because you may be having a meeting with the parents and they're a bit unhappy that their child's not doing as well as expected, and you've got all these records of incidents that help support your conversation with the parents, you might just want to look at your 2019 data. So what you could do is just choose that year. I don't actually think we've got 2019 data. Let's just choose 2020. As you can see, there's some data from 2018. So let me just see if I can size that. No, we would just click the button that says print all incidents. And that will give us all the information that we want to see that we can then discuss with his parents. The delete incident option, as with the edit incident option, is only available to staff members who have been given permission to edit or delete incidents. So you may find that staff members enter an incident, but then they can't make any changes to it. That can all be updated in your access level screen. So if I go into settings and I look at access levels, this is where we define what access levels are required to access each individual function. So for example, edit an incident at the moment is set to access level 0. That means anyone can enter and edit an incident. But if you wanted to delete it, well, you need access level 3, which is a GradeXpert administrator. So we're preventing other staff members from deleting incidents unless they are a GradeXpert administrator. All right, that actually covers most of the incident tracking side of GradeXpert. Does anyone else have any questions, or is this all fairly clear? I know we were scheduled to go just for an hour, but if time is now ready to go. Okay, I've been asked if we can just go over the role of students again. No problem at all. Let's get that up and running. So for incidents where you want to record who is the instigator, who is the victim, and who is the observer, you can change that terminology quite easily. Every incident allows you to select that. But if you go to other settings in your settings screen, you've got the option here to define the language you want to use or change the terminology to something that is a bit more meaningful to your school. Everyone uses slightly different terminology, so this allows you to tie it in with exactly what you're typing in. So I'm just going to call it bystander. Instigator, victim, bystander. This is just the terminology we use. Every incident type that we set up allows you to choose the student role or leave it blank. Things like sick bay visits, you'd leave them blank, but for negative behavior incidents, for example, you wouldn't leave them blank. So when we add the incident, the role is chosen when you choose the students. So you'll notice that there's a column here called role, and that picks up those three options, those three different terms that we've set up in the settings screen. So for Walter, he's the instigator, and as soon as you choose a role, it automatically selects that row as well. Jerry is the bystander, and Rosalind is the victim. So by doing that, you can see the students across the top have all been selected, along with the role that we've defined for those students. We can set up all your incidents for you. If you haven't used GradeXpert's incident tracker before, just get in contact with us. We will send you some example drop-down lists that you can modify, that you can add to, and then we can set those incidents up for you on GradeXpert and set up a time to do some training with your staff as well. Training will be very quick because it's basically just how to add an incident, and then you'd be using the incident summary yourselves to be able to analyze the data that teachers have entered throughout the day and throughout the year. Just enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you again for your time and attention. Goodbye, everybody.